Hi, this video is intended for beginner violin students as well as parents of very young violin students, showing them how to tune their violin. Now, before we get started, I'd like to show you what you need to do the tuning. You can either get one of these electronic tuners, or you can download an app to your phone or tablet that looks like one of these. First, we're going to identify the strings on the violin. With the violin facing you, the strings facing you, from the left-hand side, we have the lowest string, the G string, followed by the D string, and then the A string, and the highest string, E string, is on the right-hand side. Now, there are two ways to tune the violin, depending on how far your violin is out of tune. You can use the fine tuners, one for each string, or you can use the tuning pegs. Now, the fine tuners, by definition, are for fine movements or very small movements of the string, and the tuning pegs go much further. However, you have to be careful not to turn the tuning pegs too far, or else you may break the string. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using the electronic tuner, but both the electronic tuner and the phone app work pretty much the same way. When you first turn on the tuner, you'll notice a letter in the middle, a light that bounces back and forth between red and green, and also a number on the side. Here it says 440. Now 440 Hertz is the frequency of the A string, which is one of the strings that we'll be tuning. If your tuner shows a different number than 440, you're going to use the calibrate button to get the number up or down so that it reaches 440. I'm going to put it here so that you can see. Now the letter in the middle shows the note that the tuner is detecting, which is helpful when we tune the four strings. Now you can see that it's detecting my voice. That's why it's bouncing back and forth. Now we're ready to tune the violin. You can hear that my violin right now is quite out of tune. Sounds pretty bad, right? So let's start with the A string. Now when you tune each string, make sure the letter in the middle corresponds to the string that you're tuning. So as you can see, the electronic tuner is detecting an A, but it's on the low side. So I'm going to turn the fine tuner in a clockwise direction to make the string go higher. So now the needle is getting very close to the middle, and I'm seeing a green light. So now my A string is in tune. Next, we tune the D string. Now you notice that on the electronic tuner, the needle is on the right-hand side, showing that my string is too high or sharp. However, if you look at the middle, the letter is C sharp instead of D. And that's because my D string is so low right now that the electronic tuner thinks that I'm tuning to a C sharp. But of course, there's no C sharp string. So I'm going to have to turn the fine tuner in a clockwise direction. So now the electronic tuner detects a D, but I'm still fairly low. Now onto the G string. It's also on the low side. So I'm going to go clockwise. Until it reaches the middle. And finally, we have the E string. So you can see that the E string is actually too high or sharp. So I'm going to go in a counterclockwise direction. Oh, I went too far. So now it's on the low side. So it's pretty close. So I'm going to do some checking with the bow. So now my violin is in tune. Next, I'm going to show you how to tune the violin with the tuning pegs. But before we get started on that, I'd like you to check your violin bridge to make sure it's standing upright. Because sometimes if several of your strings are out of tune or very loose, there's a chance that your bridge may be tilted. And if you turn the tuning pegs with your bridge tilted, there's a chance that the bridge may get pulled down, therefore damaging the violin itself. So you want to avoid that. Now, let's identify the tuning peg for each string. The G string peg is on the left-hand side, the lower tuning peg. The upper tuning peg on the left-hand side is for the D string, and on the right-hand side, the upper tuning peg is for the A string, and finally the E string goes to the lower tuning peg on the right-hand side. To make the string go higher, you turn the tuning peg away from you. To make the string go lower, you turn the tuning peg towards you. Now, when I use the tuning pegs, I usually like to put the violin on my lap with one hand behind the violin neck. This way the violin is safe and doesn't fall. I also like to have my thumb on the front so I can pluck the string at any time. Sometimes the tuning peg is stuck in the peg hole, so you can't go higher or turn away from you. In that case, you might want to loosen the string by turning the tuning peg towards you. This way, the tuning peg will have a little more freedom to move in the peg hole. And then you can go higher again. So let's start with the A string. As you can see, the electronic tuner is now registering a G, so it's quite low. I have to keep going. So you notice that when I'm turning the tuning peg, I'm also pushing the peg into the hole while supporting my violin on the other side with my other hand. Because if you don't push the peg into the hole, it may slip back and your string gets loosened again. So now my A string is actually a little bit too high, but that's okay. We can use the fine tuner later on to get it back in tune. Let's go to the D string. It's quite low, so I'm going to have to go up by turning away from me. Now it says a D, so I'm fairly close. Again, I'm going to leave it there and double check later on with the fine tuner. And you notice that every time I turn the tuning peg, I pluck the string to make sure that I don't go too far and snap the string. Now it's getting close. So I'm pretty close. Next we tune the E string. Now my E string is actually too high, so I'm going to turn it towards me to go lower. Go back up. So see right now, my tuning peg just slipped back, making the E string really, really low. But that's okay. I'm going to go back up again, and this time I'm really going to push the peg into the peg hole. So that's pretty close, and I'm going to now use the bow to check. It's fairly close. Just a little bit on the low side. Now the A is in tune. And finally the G. A little bit low. So now my four strings are in tune. Sometimes I notice that when my students are checking the strings with the bow and then using the fine tuners, they put their left hand on the outside or the left hand side of the violin and then turn the fine tuners this way. Now this is actually a very dangerous thing to do, because if your left hand is over here and your right hand is playing the bow, there's a chance that your left hand may push the violin down. So what you want to do is move the left hand to the inside and turn it this way. And that's much safer. Now, that's of course assuming that you can hold the violin without your left hand. If you cannot do that, then it's best to turn the fine tuner with your right hand and then play. So there you go. That's how you tune the violin. Thanks for watching, and good luck.